I'm not supposed to be here, Mason Zeller muttered under his breath, adjusting the collar of his too-tight thrift store dress shirt as he held his 5-year-old daughter's hand a little tighter. "Daddy, are there going to be cupcakes?" Finley asked, her big brown eyes wide with innocent hope. Mason crouched in front of her just outside the glass doors of the Kensington Hotel ballroom. "Probably. But remember, we're guests tonight, okay? So we say thank you, we smile, and we don't touch anything unless someone says it's okay." She nodded solemnly, her curls bouncing. "Got it." He took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room exploded with light and color: white marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a massive floral display that probably cost more than his rent. Laughter drifted through the air, glasses clinked, and a string quartet played something elegant that made Mason feel even more out of place. He tugged at his shirt again, suddenly regretting every second of this. He only came because Finley's after-school program gave them 2 passes to the annual Harmony Hearts charity gala. Free food, entertainment, and maybe, if luck actually existed in his life, someone handing out job opportunities. He was still between gigs after getting laid off from the construction company last month, and the bills weren't waiting. He scanned the crowd, trying not to look like a lost cause. Finley tugged his hand. "Daddy, look." She pointed toward a dessert bar stacked high with pastel-colored cupcakes. Mason followed her gaze, chuckled, and nodded. "Okay, go ahead, but one, and come right back." She darted away, weaving through the crowd with the confidence only a child could have in a room full of tailored suits and ball gowns. He sighed, stepping back near the entrance, trying to blend into the wall. It wasn't until he heard a woman's voice just beside him that he turned his head. "She's adorable." "Yours?" Mason blinked. A woman in a sleek gold dress stood beside him, a glass of champagne in hand, her green eyes warm but sharp. Her chestnut hair was tucked effortlessly behind one ear, and she had the kind of poise that made it very clear she belonged in this room, unlike him. "Yeah," he said, clearing his throat. "She's mine, Finley." "She looks like she's on a mission," the woman said with a grin, nodding toward the dessert table. "She takes cupcakes very seriously. I respect that." She stuck out her hand. "Lena Rowe." Mason hesitated, then shook it. "Mason Zeller." She tilted her head. "You don't look like the typical Kensington gala guest." He gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, I'm kind of the free sample. Won some tickets through my daughter's school." "Well, then they should give out more of those tickets," she said, her gaze lingering on his face, not in a judgmental way, but like she was actually looking at him. "You're probably the most interesting person here." Mason raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "I'm known for that," Lena said, sipping her drink, eyes twinkling. "Are you with the charity?" "Sort of," she said. "I fund it." Mason blinked. You're the Lena Rowe." She gave a one-shouldered shrug. "Guilty." He tried not to let his jaw drop. He'd seen her name on the event banner Rowe Ventures. One of the biggest private donors in the city. He suddenly felt like his shirt was strangling him. "Wow, thanks for tonight. It means a lot to my daughter, and me." Lena looked at him, a little smile tugging at her lips. "You're welcome." Finley returned a moment later, frosting on her nose. "Daddy, they have strawberry." Mason knelt and wiped her face gently with a napkin. "That's awesome, Bug." Lena crouched beside them. "Hi, Finley, I'm Lena." Finley looked at her, then at Mason. "She's pretty." Lena laughed. "Thank you. Are you a princess?" Mason's ears turned red. "Finn, it's okay," Lena said, her eyes soft. "Only on weekends." Finley's jaw dropped. "No way." Lena grinned and winked. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Lena stayed with them, asking Finley about school, her favorite color, her favorite cupcake toppings. Mason watched them, stunned at how natural she was with his daughter. He expected her to excuse herself, to go back to sipping champagne with executives and politicians. But she stayed. Eventually, she looked up at him. "You hungry?" Mason blinked. Come on," she said. "Dinner's being served, and I want to hear more about Finley's cupcake theories." They sat at one of the round tables near the front. Mason couldn't stop fidgeting. He felt like a fraud in this room, like everyone could see right through him. But Lena didn't treat him like that. She asked questions. She listened. She laughed when Finley told a knock-knock joke that made no sense. And Mason couldn't help noticing how her eyes lingered on him when she thought he wasn't looking. After dinner, people started to mingle again. Lena stood beside him as Finley danced with a group of kids near the stage. "You know," Lena said, her voice softer now, "you're kind of incredible." Mason gave her a look. "You don't know me." "I know enough," she said. "You raised a child who trusts you completely, who feels safe enough to be herself in a room like this." That says everything. He swallowed hard, not sure what to do with that. "I don't usually talk to anyone at these events," she added, "but I'm glad I did tonight." Mason's voice was low. "Me too." They stood in silence a moment, the music humming in the background, then Lena turned to him. "Would you maybe want to see me again?" Mason stared at her. "You mean like—" "Yes," she smiled, "exactly like that." He looked at Finley, giggling in her cupcake-stained dress, then back at Lena. "Yeah," he said. "I'd really like that." 3 days later, Mason stood in his cramped kitchen, elbows deep in dish soap, while Finley sat at the tiny table nearby coloring with absolute focus. The faucet dripped in a slow rhythm, and the overhead light flickered every few minutes, a reminder that the apartment was long overdue for maintenance. He scrubbed a plate, trying not to think about the message Lena had left on his phone earlier that morning. He had replayed her voice 3 times before deleting it. "Daddy, do you think Lena likes pancakes?" Finley asked, not looking up from her drawing. Mason paused, held the plate under running water. "Why do you ask?" "I want to draw her a pancake dragon." She said she liked dragons. He dried his hands on a towel, crouched beside her. "She said that." "Uh-huh. I asked her if dragons were real and she said they are if you believe hard enough." Finley beamed. "I believe real hard." Mason stared at his daughter's face, the joy there, and felt a strange ache in his chest. He hadn't brought Lena up around Finley, hadn't wanted to confuse his daughter, but apparently Lena had made more of an impression than he thought. He stood, ran a hand through his hair, then crossed to the counter where his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He let it ring. Then silence. He didn't know how someone like Lena could possibly fit into the world he was trying to hold together with duct tape and hope, but she'd been clear. She wanted to see him again. He just didn't know what that meant. Later that afternoon, he and Finley walked the 3 blocks to the community center, where she had her reading group. As he helped her out of her jacket, a familiar voice carried across the hallway. "There you are." Mason turned, heart stuttering. Lena stood just past the check-in desk, jeans and a navy coat over a soft blue sweater. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, and she held a stack of children's books in one arm. "How did you?" he started. "I called the school," she said, stepping closer. "Told them I wanted to donate some books to the reading program. They pointed me here." Finley's face lit up. Lena crouched, smiling. "I brought dragon books. Think you can help me pick the best one?" Finley nodded enthusiastically and took her hand without hesitation. Mason watched them disappear into the reading room, his stomach twisting in knots. When Lena re-emerged 20 minutes later, she found him waiting in the hallway, arms folded, tension lining his jaw. "You found us," he said quietly. "I wanted to," she replied. He looked away. "This isn't exactly your usual orbit." "Maybe I'm tired of my usual orbit." "Lena," he began. "You don't have to protect me, Mason," she said, stepping in front of him. "I'm not fragile, and I'm not looking for a fantasy. I like you, and I think Finley's amazing. That's the beginning and end of it." He stared at her, the words catching in his throat. "You don't even know what I do. You said you were between jobs. So what? I've been between happiness and pressure for years. Doesn't mean I stopped trying," he exhaled slowly. "I don't want to be a project." "You're not," she said firmly. "You're a person I met at a gala who made me laugh when I was bored out of my mind and reminded me what real looks like." She glanced toward the reading room window, where Finley sat in a circle of kids holding a book like it was treasure. "I'm not here for charity," Lena added. "I'm here because I want to be." That night, Mason sat on the couch after Finley had gone to sleep, the apartment dim except for the soft glow of the television. He hadn't turned it on. He just sat there, thinking. His phone rang again. This time he answered. "I owe you dinner," he said into the receiver. There was a pause. Then Lena's voice, soft and amused. "You cook?" "I make a killer tuna melt." She laughed, light and real. "Dangerous. I'll bring dessert." He hesitated. "You sure about this?" "I am." The next evening, she showed up at his door with a box of pastries from a place Mason would never dare set foot in. She wore a burgundy coat and boots that clicked softly against the hallway floor. When he opened the door, she handed him the box with both hands. "No pressure, just dinner." He stepped aside. "Come in." She looked around the apartment as she entered. There was no judgment on her face, only quiet curiosity. She noticed the stack of overdue bills on the counter but said nothing. Instead, she smiled at the smell coming from the kitchen. "That the famous tuna melt. Don't get your hopes up," he replied. Finley ran toward her, arms out. "Lena, I made you a dragon." Lena knelt, taking the crayon drawing with a kind of reverence. "He's perfect. This one breathes maple syrup, right?" "Obviously," Finley said proudly. Dinner was simple: sandwiches, soup, and store-bought apple juice. Lena ate like it was a 5-star meal, complimenting Finley's table setting and asking Mason about the spices he used. Finley told stories between bites, and Lena listened like every word mattered. After Finley had gone to bed, Mason walked Lena to the door. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted quietly. "You don't have to know," she said. "You just have to be honest." He looked at her, really looked. "I'm not used to this kind of attention. I'm not used to giving it to someone who actually deserves it." He exhaled, the honesty in her words settling something inside him. "You really don't care about the mess." "I think the mess is part of the good stuff," she said with a smile. "It means it's real." Before he could stop himself, he leaned in and kissed her, soft and unsure and entirely honest. When he pulled back, she was still close. "Next time," she whispered, "you're making grilled cheese." Then she turned and walked into the night, her perfume lingering like a promise. And for the first time in a long while, Mason didn't feel like he was waiting for something to go wrong. He felt like maybe, just maybe, something was finally going right. By the following week, Mason had stopped pretending that Lena Rowe wasn't becoming a gravitational force in his life. She'd come over twice more, once with a bucket of sidewalk chalk for Finley, and another time with a bag of groceries that made Mason's fridge look like it belonged in a cooking show. He didn't ask her to bring anything. She didn't ask permission. She just showed up, always with a quiet confidence, like she'd already decided she belonged. It was dangerous, how easily she fit in. But the morning he found an envelope taped to his apartment door, one marked with the logo of the development company that had recently bought out his old construction firm, everything shifted. Inside the envelope was a letter offering him a contract position. Short-term, but solid pay. A friend from the job site must have passed his name along. It was something. He picked up the phone without thinking. "I got work," he said the moment Lena answered. There was a pause. Then, "That's amazing, Mason." His throat tightened. "It's not permanent." "Just a few months, still." Her voice warmed. "It's a start." He hesitated. "Can I take you to dinner?" "You mean someplace with actual menus?" "I mean someplace you don't have to bring the food." She laughed. "Pick me up tomorrow night." The next evening he showed up at her address, stunned again by the building's sheer size. A concierge greeted him, and within minutes, Lena stepped into the marble-floored lobby wearing a navy coat belted at the waist, her hair swept up. She looked different, polished in a way that reminded him where she came from, but when she saw him, her expression softened instantly. "Wow," she said, glancing at his pressed shirt. "You clean up nice." He gave a quiet laugh. "I borrowed an iron." It was a whole thing. They rode the elevator down together, and he opened the passenger door of the cab that waited out front. He'd splurged on a reservation at a small family-owned bistro he remembered from years ago, hoping the food would outshine the cracked leather seats and flickering candlelight. It did. Lena leaned in after the second course. "This is better than anything I've eaten at those 5-star places." "Lying won't get you dessert," he said. "Who's lying?" she countered, dipping her spoon into the lemon tart. "I think this is the best date I've had in years." He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. When the check came, he reached for it. She didn't stop him. On the way back, she linked her arm through his as they walked the final block to her building from where the cab dropped them off. The wind had picked up, and her hair danced around her face. "You always this quiet after dinner?" she asked. "I'm thinking, dangerous habit." He looked at her. "I'm trying to figure out how this works, us. You've got an entire life I don't belong in." She stopped walking. "That's not your call, Mason. I'm not saying it to push you away." Then why say it at all? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because I don't want to be something you look back on and call a phase. She stepped closer. You're not a phase. You're the first thing in a long time that feels like it's mine. He stared at her, the city humming around them, and knew if he let himself fall, he wasn't getting back up the same man. Come upstairs, she said. I can't. Finley's with my neighbor, and I told her I'd be back by 10. Lena nodded slowly, disappointment flickering behind her eyes. Another time? Yeah, he said. Definitely. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, lingering for half a second longer than necessary. Drive safe. The next morning, Mason was up before sunrise, packing a bag for Finley and getting her ready for the day. He dropped her off at the neighbor's, then headed to the job site with a strange mix of nerves and relief. The work came back like muscle memory. Measuring, lifting, cutting. His hands moved without hesitation. By noon, his shirt was damp with sweat, and his arms ached like they used to. During the lunch break, he sat on a stack of plywood and checked his phone. A photo had come in from Lena. Finley crouched on the sidewalk, surrounded by rainbow chalk dragons. He stared at it for a long time. That night, when he got home, Finley was already asleep. He tucked her in gently, then opened his laptop, pulled up a blank document, and began typing out a new resume. He didn't know what he was doing exactly, but for the first time in months, he was making plans. The next weekend, Lena invited them both to a park across town, the kind with paddle boats and food trucks and musicians playing under the trees. They spent the afternoon eating soft pretzels and feeding ducks, and Mason couldn't remember the last time his daughter laughed that much. Later, while Finley climbed a rope tower, Lena sat beside him on the grass, knees drawn up. My mother's in town, she said suddenly. He blinked. Is that a good thing? She wants to have dinner. She, knows about you. He turned to her. What does that mean? She asked if I was seeing someone. I said yes. He searched her face. You sure that's something you want to bring me into? I'm not ashamed of you, Mason. It's not about shame. Then what is it? He looked away. It's... Your family's going to think I'm using you. She didn't deny it. Yeah, she said finally. They might, he nodded, not surprised. But if you're willing, she continued, I'd like you to meet her. I want her to see what I see. He didn't answer right away. Then Finley came running over, breathless. Can we get ice cream? Lena stood and offered Mason her hand. Come on, I'll buy. He reached for her hand, warm and solid in his, and let her pull him to his feet. He didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of finding out. The rain came down in sheets the night Mason walked into the Rowe family estate. It wasn't the kind of house that had neighbors. It had gates. Manicured hedges. A driveway that curved beneath an arched portico, where his borrowed sedan looked like a distant cousin to the Rolls-Royce parked beside it. His jacket was soaked through by the time he reached the front door, but the butler didn't so much as blink, before ushering him into a marble-floored foyer that smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. Lena appeared at the top of the staircase, her expression unreadable. You came. He ran a hand through his damp hair. Would have felt worse if I didn't, she descended, heels silent against the polished stone. As she reached him, she looked him over, not judging, but scanning like she was checking for cracks. You okay? Just wet. And vaguely terrified. You're not alone. Mason followed her into the dining room, where the chandelier threw fractured light across a table that looked like it could seat 20. At one end sat a woman in a fitted black dress, a string of pearls at her throat, and a glass of untouched wine in front of her. Her posture was impeccable, her gaze even more so. Mother, Lena said, her voice clipped. This is Mason Zeller. The woman didn't rise. Mr. Zeller. You're braver than most. I work construction, he said. Bravery's part of the deal. The corner of her mouth tilted, but it wasn't amusement. How quaint. Lena gestured to the chair beside her. Mason sat, conscious of every movement. The silverware was heavy. The water tasted like it had been filtered through diamonds. I understand you have a daughter, her mother said without preamble. Yes, she isn't here. She's at a friend's house. I see. There was a silence that stretched thin, then Lena leaned forward. Why don't we stop pretending you're here to make polite conversation? Her mother set down her glass. I'm here because your father would have wanted me to be. Mason glanced at Lena, but her face had gone cold. You didn't mention your father, he said quietly. He passed last year, Lena replied, her voice flat. Heart attack. I'm sorry. Her mother's gaze flicked between them. He built this family on alliances, Lena, relationships that made sense. You can't build a future on sentiment. Mason pushed his plate away gently. I think I've heard enough. Lena stood with him. So have I. They left the dining room without another word. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Mason didn't say anything as they crossed the drive, the night stretching around them. I didn't want you to meet her like that, Lena said as he opened the car door for her. You don't owe me an apology. She thinks I'm reckless, that I chase things I don't understand. He leaned against the car, hands in his pockets. And are you? No, she said. But I am chasing something, he looked at her. What? You? Her voice didn't waver. I want this. Not for the headlines, not to make a point. I want it because you and Finley make me feel like I'm not performing anymore. He felt the words hit somewhere deep in his chest. I don't know what I'm doing, Lena. I don't care. They were quiet for a long moment. Then Mason opened the passenger door. Get in. I'm not letting you walk back up there alone. She looked at him, then slid into the seat. Back in his apartment, Finley was asleep on the couch with a picture book open across her chest. Lena knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. She waited up, Mason nodded. Said she wanted to draw you something in the morning. Lena smiled, then stood. You don't have to keep doing this like it's temporary, he crossed his arms. Doing what? Living like I'm going to change my mind. He didn't answer, she stepped closer. Tell me what you're afraid of, he looked at her, everything in him raw and exposed. That I'm not enough. You are. And if I mess this up, it's not just me, it's her too. Lena reached for his hand. Then don't mess it up, stay. His voice was a whisper. What does that even look like? Her eyes held his. It looks like coming with me tomorrow. To where? To a property I bought last month. It's on the edge of the city, old farmhouse, needs work. And you want me to. What, fix it up? I want you to live in it, she said. With me, he stared at her. You're serious? I'm not offering a fairy tale, she said. I'm offering space. A place where Finley can run in the yard and you don't have to worry about the pipes bursting. I can give you that. I want to give you that. He sat down hard on the arm of the couch. That's not a small thing. No, Lena said. It's everything, and I want to build everything with you. He buried his face in his hands, then looked up at her. You're not afraid? I was. Until I met you. The next morning, Mason stood in the middle of a sunlit kitchen with peeling cabinets and a crooked window frame. Finley ran through the empty rooms upstairs, her laughter echoing off the walls. Lena stood beside him, her hand in his. You sure about this? He asked. Completely, he turned to her. Then I guess we've got work to do, she smiled. We've got a whole life to build, and for the first time Mason believed it, not just the promise, but the future, the one he never let himself imagine until now. The first month in the farmhouse passed in a blur of dust, paint, and the sound of hammers echoing through open windows. Mason worked on the house by day, and Lena joined him after meetings, tying her hair up, rolling paint on walls, and asking questions about things like floor joists and water heaters with genuine curiosity. Finley turned the field behind the house into a kingdom of her own, ruling over dandelions and frogs with equal authority. Somehow, it all worked, not easily, but honestly. One Friday afternoon, Lena dropped her keys on the kitchen counter and leaned against the doorway, watching Mason install the final cabinet in the kitchen. Her blazer was tossed over the banister, sleeves rolled up, heels already kicked off by the door. You know you're doing this backward, right? She said. Mason looked up from where he was drilling. Doing what? You're supposed to impress the girl first, then reveal the fixer-upper. You skipped straight to sweat and sawdust. He stood, wiping his hands on a towel. You didn't seem to mind the sawdust when you were sanding the windowsills. She crossed the room, eyes scanning the nearly finished kitchen. I didn't. He pulled the last drawer open and closed again. It's not perfect, but it's solid. That's what I said about you, she replied. Mason stared at her a moment. You say that like it's a compliment. It is. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper. I got something today, he raised an eyebrow. Good news, I hope so, she handed it to him. It's a grant approval for the Youth Outreach Project. The one I've been trying to get funded for 2 years. He opened it, scanned the first few lines, and whistled. That's a lot of zeros. It's going to be a full program now, not just books and volunteers. We'll have mentorships, job training, even housing assistance. Real impact. He folded the paper carefully and handed it back. You're going to change lives. She stepped closer. I want to start here, in this county. There's land on the other side of town that could be perfect. Mason nodded slowly. You're thinking long-term. I am. He looked at her, searching her face. You're not going to wake up one day and miss the skyline, the penthouse, the galas. Lena smiled. I didn't fall in love with views or marble floors. He held her gaze. What did you fall in love with? She reached up, brushing a streak of paint from his jaw. A man who builds things even when the odds are against him. A girl who sees dragons in pancakes. And a life that feels like mine for the first time. That night, they sat on the back porch while Finley chased fireflies in the tall grass. The air was cool, the scent of cutwood still clinging to Mason's shirt. Lena curled beside him, her head on his shoulder, her hand laced with his. I keep thinking about your dad, Mason said quietly. Lena tilted her head. Why? I wish he could see this. What you're building, she exhaled softly. He'd probably tell me it's impractical. Mason looked out over the field. Maybe. But I think he'd be proud anyway. I hope so. They sat in silence a while longer, watching Finley twirl with her arms outstretched. You ever think about making it official? Mason asked. Lena turned to him. You mean? I mean us, this house, the three of us. I want to give Finley more than weekends and school pickups. I want her to know this is permanent, that you are. Lena sat up, her eyes wide. Are you asking me to marry you? I didn't plan to, not like this, but yeah, I think I am. She laughed, covering her mouth. You don't even have a ring. I've got a toolbox and a promise. She reached for his face, her eyes shining. That's more than enough. The wedding came quietly 3 weeks later. Just them, Finley, and a few friends from the community center who'd helped strip the wallpaper and patch the roof. Lena wore a cream-colored dress that fluttered in the wind, and Mason wore the same shirt he'd worn to the gala, now tailored and pressed. Finley carried a bouquet of wildflowers and announced the vows like a town crier. They said their I-dos beneath the old oak tree in the front yard. With the sun dipping low and casting golden light across the porch, they'd rebuilt together. Afterward, Lena danced barefoot in the grass, her laugh echoing across the open fields. Mason pulled her close when the stars came out, whispering something that made her eyes fill and her fingers tighten around his. That night, after Finley was tucked into bed with her favorite story beside her pillow, Mason and Lena sat on the edge of their bed, the window open to the sound of crickets. I never thought this would be mine, he said. It's ours, she corrected. And we're not done. Not even close, he smiled, pulling her against him. What next? She leaned into him, her voice soft. The center opens in spring. We'll need volunteers and maybe, I don't know, a swing set, Mason laughed. Finley would approve. They fell asleep with the window open, the night cool and still, the farmhouse quiet around them. Months passed. The outreach center opened with Lena at the helm, and Mason designed the community garden beside it. Finley started first grade and proudly told her teacher her family was made of builder's dragons optional. One evening, Mason came home to find Lena in the kitchen, barefoot, humming to herself as she stirred sauce on the stove. Finley was at the table, drawing something with intense focus. Hey, Lena said when she saw him. You're late. He kissed her cheek, ran into a neighbor. They asked if we're hiring. We are, she said. Always. He looked at her a long moment. You're really happy. She turned off the burner and faced him fully. I wake up every day knowing I'm where I'm supposed to be. That's more than happy. He glanced at the table. What are you drawing, Bug? Finley held it up. It's us, our house, our tree, and the baby. Mason blinked. The what? Finley beamed. The baby. Mommy said there's one coming. He turned to Lena, stunned. She nodded slowly, a smile spreading across her face. You're serious, I found out this morning. I was going to tell you after dinner. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground as she laughed and clung to him. The house had cracks in the plaster and the occasional creaky floorboard, but it was theirs. And inside its walls echoed the laughter of a family that had built something stronger than anything money could buy. Love. Chosen, fought for, and fully, finally theirs. Forever.